To our 26th session of the Living Labs. We're honored to have Dr. Samuli with us giving his talk today. So Dr. Samuli is a postdoctoral researcher at Tampere University and within the gamification group. He's also an educational technology developer from Finland. So during his stay in academia and his work, he has worked as an educational game developer, content designer for online environments, learning environments, and also as a researcher in several projects in the Department of Education, Information Technology. He has received his PhD in 2021 from the University of Turku. His thesis focused on location-based games, game design, and related phenomena. He's also been involved in research activities globally. And in his research and his work, he aims to understand the influence of technologies on human behavior and how it can direct human behavior into a beneficial direction. He has also had multiple publications, some relating to augmented reality development in archaeological sites, and he is very proficient in this work on location-based games, as you will see today in his work that he will be presenting in this regard. So thank you, everyone, and please let's welcome Dr. Samuli to share his work. We can't hear you. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, now you can. Sorry. So thank you, Narmen. Can you see the slides and hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Excellent. So here is me, a picture of me 10 years ago in Israel. We visited some archaeological sites with my father, and he had a friend there, Mikko Louhivuori, who worked at the Israel antiquity and was working at the Rockefeller Museum. So then we also visited him and these sites, and it was a good trip for me, maybe my first experience with these ancient sites. I learned quite a lot already then, but mostly they were these quite empty ruins. Something had been there before, but of course we can't fully see. We have to use our imagination. There's some support, like some signs, and we can read about it, but we really can't do more than that. So did the place perhaps look like this, or did it look like this? So there are some games, like in this photo we see Assassin's Creed Origins, that is like a virtual recreation of what Egypt may have looked like. So it's not supposed to be the exact copy, but the Assassin's Creed series is actually known for sometimes replicating historical places quite accurately and then representing them in the digital world. For example, when the Notre Dame Cathedral broke down, or burned, rather, the roof was burning, and then Assassin's Creed offered to give a model of the cathedral for everyone to use in reconstruction if it was any help, because they had previously, for one of their games, modeled and textured the cathedral. So here's another example of a bit older game that represents the Hittite culture, I think, called Age of Empires, created by Microsoft, where you have this top-down view. This is perhaps even further from reality, because it's obviously a game that's meant to be entertaining, but it has some of the architecture is something that could have been in those cultures back in the day. So from here, the question comes, can we bring some of these benefits that we have in games and art to the real world location of the cultural heritage site? We know many of these games are digital, you can play them at home, but when we actually go to the site, what can we do there? I'm going to talk about this a little bit, or mainly during my talk. So let's start with looking at these archaeological sites. So these are two examples. I think they are from Hazor and Megiddo in Israel. So in both these pictures, we can see something. On the left, there is what is perhaps a temple, or not a temple, but this kind of altar structure. And then on the right, we have some housing structures. And there are multiple layers of history here. So we know that archaeology is a science that destroys its material. So when we begin archaeological digs, a lot of permissions need to be applied for. And the reason is, of course, that on the top, we may have something like from the Middle Ages. And when we dig further down, we end up in the Iron Age. And then we can dig even further and find Bronze Age things. And then there are strata even below that. But in order to reach the early strata, we need to destroy what is on top. And that is a problem in archaeology. So sometimes we can make decisions that, okay, we are going to dig here, we're going to destroy some part. And sometimes we conserve some of the areas for future generations to excavate. But how technology fits here, we can perhaps, okay, there's a question in the chat. Oh, Palestine. Yeah. So there's okay, I'm already in the next slide. But okay, so the thing to know about in the previous that we have this strata, and with technology, we can maybe visualize and conserve what we destroy. And we find all kinds of objects there, pottery, maybe remnants of an ancient boat. This is actually taken from the sea somewhere and then put on display. So these objects tell us something about the culture, but otherwise the culture is largely hidden. We have some ancient texts, like the Old Testament, for example, that may reveal some insights, but despite that, there's actually quite little that we know accurately. So we need to take guesses. And here is one of those locations that has been famously debated among archaeologists, this Solomonic Gate, that you can find in multiple locations actually in Israel. And there are two interpretations. The early interpretation by Yadin and Bentor suggests it's a Solomonic Gate, and the strata in which it's found should be dated somewhere like 10th century before Christ. But then Finkelstein recently proposed that actually it's a bit newer structure and it's from the Omri dynasty. So how to visualize or express these interpretations, maybe technology can help there as well. So here are some of the things to think about in these archaeological sites. So how the place looked like in the past. We have the multiple layers of history, so multiple time periods. So when you go to these sites, you may see something from the Iron Age, something from the Bronze Age, and something more modern. But maybe with technology, we could revisit the same place, first visit it in the Bronze Age kind of, and highlight those structures that are from the Bronze Age or from that time period. Then revisit it in the Iron Age and so forth. The third thing is lost knowledge of the cultures. So this is a big thing. So can we, of course, we can, as archaeologists and historians, we can find some knowledge about how perhaps these cultures lived like. And then if we can display that knowledge to our audience and the visitors, they may get a better understanding of how these structures were used and what kind of a culture built them in the first place. So I think that's quite important. And fourth, we have these different interpretations as we discussed. So not all archaeologists agree. The further we go back to the past, the more difficult it is to fully with great certainty say what it is. So let's take an alternative view. So here's the site in how we see it with our eyes, but here's the site from the top down, the map perspective. So this is Megiddo from top down. This is kind of a different way of looking at it. And on the right now we see how these maps may be populated by these points of interests. And with these points of interest, we can see where on the map we have interesting structures. And this kind of view can support the visitors in understanding what the location is about. So while this brings us to these location-based games, so map-based games. So why are we interested in them? These funny creatures, do they really fit into archaeological sites? Do they destroy something valuable? For example, do they replace our imagination with something else? So are they even a good thing? So let's discuss a bit. So these games makes walking more interesting, sure. They help navigate around. So if the points of interest are relevant locations, you can maybe find them better. They can be used to display information about the locations. So we know that these archaeological sites have all kind of signs typically that, okay, here was something, info boards. So those can be turned to digital. And then with these points of interest, we can create all kinds of paths for visitors. Here's Megiddo once again, but this time through OpenStreetMap and the Niantic database. So on the left, we have OpenStreetMaps, which displays these most central archaeological findings on a map like this. And then on the right, this is the map that is used for Pokemon Go, for example. So if a Pokemon Go player goes here, this is what they see. We notice there's a great difference between the two, but actually neither of them are as accurate and as high quality as what you have when you go on location. So the archaeologists and the Israel Antiquity Authority who are in charge of these places, they have prepared a much better information, but that information is not available on these digital platforms. So this is one challenge when we create these location-based technologies, how perhaps the experts could cooperate with these commercial designers and create better products. This is another example of the points of interest. Oh, okay. Okay, sorry for using the wrong terminology here. I'm from Finland, so I don't know everything. Kind of far from the north, but okay. So here are these points of interests located on the left. You can see we have picked them up from 3 different location-based games. We see they're quite different. And on the right, we see the same location in Pokemon Go and Dragon News Go. We see that they are quite different. So just kind of highlighting that we need to take care of our care where they are, because these points of interest are the places where players actually go. So as experts, let's make sure that we place them in the right places. So some cooperation needed. Okay. So here's a summary of some room for improvement in these these existing location-based games. So first, the point of interest coverage is not optimal. Then only limited information about the points of interest is displayed. So even if there is some kind of a location, we do not necessarily get enough information about it. Then there's no way to visualize alternative interpretations. So we need to kind of enable maybe even visitors to see that this is controversial, not everyone agrees, and maybe even visualize how it could be in these two, how the place could look with through the lens of these 2 different interpretations. Then no visual support of what the structures may have looked like. So here, maybe augmented reality technology could really enhance what it looks like. And then finally, that all the strata are displayed on the same level. So we go to Bronze Age or Iron Age, or so it would be nice to distinguish what is from where. Okay, so here's a famous picture. I'm sure most of you are aware of where this is from. So now let's discuss how the AR aspect could improve these archaeological sites. So now we first discussed a bit about the location aspects and the points of interest and that, but now let's move to AR. So basically AR, just using our phones, we add something to the real world environment. Here are some design ideas how that could be done. So this is like visiting the same place on different centuries. So we can choose when we visit it, and the AR content could change based on which layer we are at. Here's another idea. So when we are at these archaeological sites, maybe we could have this situation that we excavate and destroy some of the layers to reach down below, but then we could visualize the destroyed layers in augmented reality. So we could preserve these layers in this way. Then here's one application that was created at my university, Turku. It was built inside this cathedral, Turku Cathedral, where they used this kind of technology where they first mapped in the 3D world the entire cathedral, all the pillars and everything. And then inside that setting, they animated a story, and you could go around the cathedral with an iPad and experience the story. It was a fictional story, but something that tried to follow the culture back in the day. So this kind of an immersive experience. These applications exist, and I think they should maybe be explored further. So this culture, kind of how to experience these cultures that are lost. So here are again some Assassin's Creed games of, there's maybe some pirate culture, and here's a small joke. So why are pirate jokes funny? Because they are. Okay. So bringing these ideas together. So in here, we can kind of see that location-based AR games offer tremendous opportunities for improving user experience at these archaeological and World Heritage sites. So we can guide users to interesting places. We can support their imagination. We can offer them information about the archaeological interpretations, locations. We can visualize different layers. So we have this guiding element, then we have this visualizing element, and this imagination supporting element through these stories and information. And finally, I think it's important that technology should not replace, but rather it should support the real world experience. So when we go to these sites, we are not going there to kind of immerse ourselves in a purely digital world, but we are there to experience the on-site experience. So whenever designing technologies, AR location-based games, it's very important to always keep in mind that we do not try to kind of take away from the real world experience in any way. So technology should never get into the way of that. Okay, I think I'm already done. This was a fast one. So yeah, so I think we can have a discussion now on these topics, or then we can go to the breakout rooms immediately.
Do you prefer to have the discussion first?
Yeah, we could have, if you have questions now or opinions.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I just want to say that our activity is not political. Dima has the right to express herself, but whether the place is considered to be in Israel or Palestine, the main point here is that we're trying to learn something about gamification. And so let us move on with a discussion, technical discussion about gamification. I just want to stress once again that we need the full names like Ala, Balqis, Mike. Please add your name, Hannah. Add your full name on the participant list, because we need all the names to be full, because we have to report who attended the training, and we have to also keep in mind that we give participation certificates. So please, Islam, also make sure that you add your second name, or at least give it to us in the chat. Thank you. Now, if anyone has any questions, please go ahead.
Okay, in fact, I do have a question, just to get the conversation started. So thank you very much, Samuli, for your talk. It was quite interesting to see, especially the idea of having those multiple layers, and you can experience the site throughout a timeline, let's say. I kind of imagined the Google Earth's, the timeline thingy, where you just move the map and you can see how the urban landscape, it just progresses through time and so forth. So my question is kind of, how would you recommend, how would someone would approach such a site or World Heritage sites when you're trying to, let's say, implement location-based game? So what is your recommendation to approaching the design, first of all, or the ideation and conceptualization? Like, how do we start, let's say, if you want to create such an experience? So the points of interest, you said they are important, but that's basically my question. So how do you recommend we start with this, let's say?
Yeah, that's a great question. Of course, there are many ways to begin. I would start by thinking how we can improve the visitor's experience. So are there any, if you collect feedback from the visitors, what would they want to have on the location? Do they wish to have more visualizations, or do they wish to have something fun to do in the location? Or do they want to learn more about the culture? So there are many use cases, and it's not depends a lot on what kind of circumstances are there, what kind of location is it, what kind of visitors we have, what are the wishes and hopes. So in a place like Petra, which is a very beautiful location in the real world, maybe we don't want to visualize too much, since people want to focus on and marvel the beauty, or at least on the outside. But then maybe in a location like Megiddo, which is just ruins, it may be better to visualize something. But of course, these are quite expensive to do if you create some specific AR content. So that's another realistic thing that designers have to consider. Can they get the funding, and what is realistic to do? So some kind of a map-based thing where you just place points of interest on a map, that's quite cheap. So, and that can be reproduced in multiple locations. So maybe that may be something quite easy to start with. And maybe the more expensive things, like the AR and animation things, maybe they could be left for later.
Thank you.
Can you please come out of the screen, because this way we can see those who are raising their hands to talk.
Can I
please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity.
Mr. Pratama?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what your background is? Where are you from?
I'm a lecturer from University of Pembangunan Nasional Veteran Jawa Timur, Indonesia.
We can't hear you. I'm sorry. Can you come closer to the microphone?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm a lecturer from Indonesia, and my specialty is games.
Still your voice is very low. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That's good now. That's good.
Okay. I'm a lecturer from Indonesia, and my specialty is also games. Okay, so I have one question. How do visitors of different ages appreciate the location-based games in the heritage site? So I mean the young visitors and the older visitors. Are there any differences in their preferences that we should anticipate? Thank you.
Thank you for the great question. There are differences, but we know that the location-based games are enjoyed by an uncommonly intergenerational audience. For example, Pokemon Go is played by the young and the old alike. So usually games are played by the younger audience, but with location-based games, there's actually evidence that the same games are enjoyed by multiple people from different ages. And maybe one of the strengths there is that the core mechanic of playing is just walking around. So walking, navigating, they're very fundamental things that everyone kind of enjoys. When we think about different ages, I would perhaps not start to make different versions for different age groups in the beginning. So just one version and let everyone play it. But if there is evidence that, for example, a younger audience want more action, maybe that could be considered at some point.
Thank you for the answer.
Tamer?
Hello, Dr. Lato. Thank you for the presentation. It's really interesting, and I believe Petra has a lot of potential of doing such AR experiences. My question is, do you think it is possible to have one application that can be useful on-site and virtually anywhere in the world? So for instance, if I want to visit and experience Petra in an AR location-based game, I have to be there. But is it possible to create something that is somehow similar experience, but while I'm in Finland or in America? Thank you.
Thank you. This is a great question. Something I've studied quite a bit myself as well. So there's this idea of digital twin, that you create a digital copy of something that's in the real world. And based on that, you can create games, just kind of 3D model, walk-arounds, all kinds of experiences. So that's one thing. Maybe this could be replicated for Petra. The technology for creating these digital twins has improved dramatically. I think in the Neural Information System Processing AI conference recently, there are many papers where you 3D scan kind of thing, and then an AI creates a 3D model out of your what you scan with your phone, it's camera. So that has improved a lot, and that enables all kinds of, it makes it much cheaper to create accurate 3D models. So then again, I would maybe even give the question back to you. So if we have this virtual model that you could then maybe access, how could we make it interesting, for example, for people in Finland or elsewhere in the world? Should we just represent it as such, or maybe add something?
I think it has to be exciting. It has to be gamified in some sort. But I think that the challenge would be in maybe GPS accurate locations. How can we replicate it, but we're not in that location? You know, I'm a little bit confused in this area.
Would you like me to answer that, Tamer, just to grow the discussion? So basically, in locations such as Petra, when you know, like geographically, it's quite difficult and it's not easy to get, or maybe not that possible to get an accurate GPS signal. You'd completely rely on visual positioning systems, so point clouds for detecting where you are at the location. So when you have a digital twin, let's say, or a scanned site, the application through certain codes, it can detect basically certain features and certain point clouds. It's point cloud comparison in your application. So it tells you where you are based on what the application sees. It's a visual positioning system rather than geographical or GPS. So if you tried, let's say, the Google Maps live live view, okay, it uses VPS. So when you cannot find where you are, or Google acts out when you're trying to find your location, you hold out your camera and it detects certain features using visual positioning, and it tells you where you are. So in terms of GPS, I think that is the way to overcome such positioning difficulties in that way. So as Samuli Lato, so the technologies that are used for creating such digital twins and laser scanning and so forth, they're quite advanced and they can help you overcome such a situation. If you agree, Samuli.
Yes, I agree, and that's a very good answer. Thank you, Narmen. So I gave the example of the Sanaseppa. So there they kind of 3D modeled the entire insides and then used the visual cues to position the player. And they are actually much more accurate than GPS signals, especially indoors. So certainly this kind of technology could perhaps, the more immersive experience you want to have on site, maybe the more likely it is that we need to rely on these camera sensors for a more accurate positioning than just the satellite navigation sensors.
Can we go to the chatting and answer some of the questions in the chatting before we go to Janset and Yusuf, please? Can you see the chat questions?
So there is a question regarding, are there any projects in this area? And what is the name of the app, AR Cathedral?
Yeah, I can give a link to the application, the Cathedral application. So here you go. That's in Google Play. I don't know if it works outside the Cathedral actually, but if you ever travel to Finland, then welcome to try it out. Are there any projects? I imagine that maybe Narmen or someone can answer this better than me.
As in this location, as you mean like Jordan or the Middle East? Or can you, if you can be more specific as what this refers to, I think we'd be more than happy to. GPS hacks works well, thanks. And then we have another comment. I can add to your answer that we can understand where we are with multiple Wi-Fi. Okay. So if you can just tell me like what this refers to, we can probably try to answer if we know of any projects in that area specifically. We can also move on to Dr. Janset. She raises her hand, and then we can go to Yusuf. So Janset, please go ahead and ask Samuli.
Yes, hello, and thank you for the talk. It's very interesting, and also interesting to see cases from other regions in the world. Actually, my question is kind of two-sided. So on the first hand, I would like to know if you have kind of guidelines for the technicalities of designing a gamified experience or game in an archaeological site. Kind of on the first hand from the level of scale. So because, for example, if we think of Petra, it's such a big site. So kind of would you create, sorry for my cat, would you create different nodes where the users engage with the experience in each node separately? Or would you think of something more comprehensive for the whole site? On the other hand, like what would the length of the experience be? Because like I would be interested to know what's the attention span of the users, like from your experience. On the other question is more about the integration of AR and VR, because as you were saying that maybe kind of full immersion is not encouraged on archaeological sites or in cultural heritage sites because we want to experience the site itself. On the other hand, we know that in the future we are going towards a bigger integration of augmented reality and virtual reality. So do you have any experience, thoughts of how to kind of merge them on the site, or maybe not, maybe it's better to kind of keep them separate? So yeah, I would appreciate any feedback on that.
Thank you. Thank you. I think both questions are great. So I'll start with the first question. So guidelines for technical designing of the experience. It really depends on what technologies we're going to use. So in the broader scale, especially if we want to scale up for multiple sites, then it becomes problematic to do very detailed AR experiences. And the reason is that the more into detail we go, the more detailed animations or stories we implement, the more they cost. So basically it may be more realistic to go with like a map-based interface where you just get locations of which is important, or then you have some kind of picture application where you can locate yourself with the app. Okay, I scanned this part of Petra now, I've visited this part, I get a certificate that I've been here, and then maybe some information, maybe some kind of a mission that your next location is over there, go and scan this. So those types of experiences, I think they are quite realistic. The technologies there, they're easy to implement. But as researchers, we always try to do something new. So maybe these more detailed animations, they are very interesting. But I really don't have an answer here. What would be the most optimal way to approach those kind of more complex designs? So everything has to be considered case by case. And then shortly answering the second question about integrating AR, VR. So certainly I agree that there's going to be more digital technology present in our lives in the future. But I would say that people most likely will want to see things through their own eyes still in the future. They will want to visit the real places. So there's something, I don't know if magical is the right word, but seeing the tangible location, experiencing the ancient history of it, I think there will be, people will want to do that. So maybe we need to even design technologies that detach our lives from the digital and help us concentrate on the real physical world.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so if Yusuf still has a question, and then we can go to Russia. So Yusuf, if you're there, you can ask your question. If not, we can, yeah. Hi, Yusuf.
مرحبا كيفكم؟
Hello.
Dear Dr. Lato, Engineer Nermeen, يعطيكم العافية. My question is to Dr. Lato. You have referred to the commercial aspect of using technology and site interpretation, for example, Pokemon Go. And my question is, to what extent that using the commercial side, one can be immersed in the experience of following, living the Pokemon experience while losing the sense of the cultural content space, actually. Therefore, that's my question, because literature review speaks of the word imaginative immersion, which can be defined as an in-game experience in which one becomes absorbed with the stories and the world, or begins to feel for or identify with a game character in the storytelling sequence. And I'm referring to this from a guide's perspective to the guide who is telling the story. So back to the question, please. Is that clear for you, Dr. Lato?
I think I understood it, but correct me if I answer poorly. Thank you very much. This is something I've been thinking a lot myself. Also, that we could view Pokemon as maybe an additional layer of reality that allows us to see familiar spaces in a new light. So if we take another location-based game like a Witcher, then we would see the same place, but again, a bit differently. And these commercial games are really exploiting this, and they're changing how the games work quite often. For example, in Pokemon, they change what Pokemon appear periodically through these events. And I think one of the reasons is that mostly people play them while going to work. So they just give something a little extra there. I think these can be played in cultural sites, and they may be enjoyable, but I am concerned that they will get in the way of the real authentic experience of the physical location. So if we would design something specifically to improve the authentic experience in the physical space, I think we would need to connect it to something that perhaps like a historical cultural setting, what was really there in the ancient times. That way we would not kind of interfere with what the visitors most likely came there to do.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can go to Rasha and then followed by Qais. Please, Rasha.
Hello. So my question probably relates to the previous question a bit, but maybe you can elaborate a bit more on how can you protect, I don't know, if from your experience, how could you protect the integrity of the historical or the heritage site? Usually, like, it's very, restorations usually are very open to interpretations. You've touched upon that. However, how can we make sure that the site itself is protected in terms of what it stands for, or its architectural ingenuity, for example, versus the immersive commercial experience of a user? If we were to put this in a setting where visitors would be from the public, let's say.
Okay, another great question. I think there is a genuine worry that if a game, for example, directs like 10 times more people to a location, they may actually trample it, may destroy some of it. Even if they don't physically destroy anything, it may be like overcrowded, they may throw rubbish there. So that's like an ethical concern even. And should we direct players to like historically valuable locations, or should we try to conserve them and instead try to have make them have a VR experience? So that's one thing. But then these conservation efforts, there are multiple levels how technology could help there. One is this digital twin. Narmen talked about the Google Earth timeline, that we could, as we do these archaeological excavations, we can preserve some layers in the digital realm, and then we can excavate further. But we could still visit the site later on and see what was there. Because sometimes these are, of course, very difficult decisions. And I mean, oftentimes you don't get permission to destroy something valuable, but there may be even something more valuable underneath. So when these difficult situations are made, then I think full documentation is very much needed. And then that can be displayed to visitors. I don't know if I answered the question at all.
Can I intervene a little bit here? First of all, in games, I'm against using, imaginary characters like Pokemons and so on. But I could be in favor of using characters that are dressed in the ancient ways, like Nabatean dresses, Roman army, using what is already known about the site and its heritage. That's on one side. The other side is that, yes, when you remove one layer and work on it, you end up destroying one layer to discover another. There is, however, if necessary, the idea of moving a whole site, like Abu Simbel, the temple was completely moved, not because we want to discover the lower layer, but because we want to build the dam. So there are options. Not only you rely on virtual conservation in the sense that you have already imagery, virtual renditions of what the site used to be, but also you can move sites or certain aspects. So please, Qais, you can ask your question, please. Hello, Qais, your microphone is off.
He says in the chat there is a problem.
Okay, while we wait for him, let me just say that that was a great, reminder that that we have these digital solutions, but we have already other existing solutions like moving the structures and other. So we shouldn't forget about the other solutions, and there has to be some interplay between our physical and then the technological dimensions, so that both complement each other.
Okay, Qais's question is about the designing process. Can you write down what you want to know? Is there a demo version?
A demo version of what exactly?
Of the game?
Which game? I think we're gonna have to wait for his question in the chat to be clear. To apply the game before applying it. To test the game, you mean a prototyping process for the design?
Yeah.
Well, that is very necessary in any game, I think. You wouldn't want to publish a game to the, open space before you have tested it with several people.
Maybe like the question is maybe if you're designing something for Petra, like basically a location-based game, so prototype testing, does it requires you to constantly go to the site and test it and go back? And does this refer to, like, is this related to the question in any way, or is it something else? I'm just trying to, after the app finished, is it updatable if we want to add and remove any information, or you need to start from the starting point? That is his question. Okay.
Okay. Most of these location-based games have a client-server architecture, meaning that they have the client application, which you update, but it's mostly the application that runs on your phone. And the application on your phone then fetches data from the server. And typically, most of the information, like the location of the points of interest and associated information, associated pictures, all the missions, all the tasks, everything comes from the server. It's very easy to update things on the server. Typically, like Facebook updates its backend servers several times a day, typically, and we don't even notice. Then I think when designing, like Narmen said, probably you need to go to the site quite a few times to make sure that everything works. It really depends on how complex things we are going to implement, but probably it's a good idea always to have a smaller goals in the beginning, get some kind of a prototype working, a demo version if you may, and then start adding the more complex functionalities.
Can I just say something about Qais' question? In business or in business model for the IT or the apps, if we consider it as a spin-off, there is always a terminology called MVP, minimum viable product, which is if it's launched, it's called beta version, which is not completed version, but it's in progress, and the target and the mission is to check the feedback of a small segment after using the application or after using this. And actually, most of the well-known apps now, even LinkedIn or Twitter or even Facebook, pass this version in the beginning for 2 or 3 months to get the feedback. I guess Qais aiming the beta version of any app.
Okay, so we answered Qais's questions, I think.
Okay, great. Any more questions? So, you think it's appropriate now to break into 2 rooms? Unless anybody still has questions, we will break out into 2 rooms. The first one will focus on ICH, both in modern Jordan, modern Jordan, embroidery, all the traditional handicrafts, food, etc. And the second will be, and this will be led by Nermeen, because she knows more about Jordan and so on. And Ms. Diala Kassab and Ms. Hanan Dagmash will be in her room. I think, Khaled, if we can have, can you give us the choice where to be?
Yes, I will.
I want to join room 1, so I'll go to room 1.
Yeah, I will allow the participants to choose the room they want.
So this is the ICH room, and I hope that Ms. Diala and Hanan will report to us on the results of their findings. And I insist that they keep them for the ICH work and the co-publication that will be related to the ICH work. In other words, we want to know what kind of applications we can help create and then make investments in them. Now, on the other hand, Dr. Lato will lead the first room, which is, so Dr. Lato is room number 1, Architect Marji is room number 2. Dr. Lato will focus on Petra. And also, before I finish, I forgot, also the ICH in old Petra, in ancient Petra. In other words, we don't want to focus on modern Jordan only, but also go back in time, if possible, about the cultural heritage, the intangible cultural heritage in Petra. For example, their ability to manage water, not the structures, not the dams, etc., but the concept of being able to manage and distribute water and so on, and so on and so on. There are many examples you can deal with. Now, on the other hand, we want the modern Petra, or what we have now, and what kind of games and what kind of innovations we can create in Petra for the benefit of creating a tourism awareness of the site and also attracting people to come to Petra. At the same time, and you mentioned this and you are right, if I have too many people in Petra, we're going to have problems with conservation and preservation. So what kind of concepts can we introduce into games and virtual reality to tell us how the tourists must be aware on how to be nice to the site? Because tourists can, and of course, Yusuf Helou, who is a tour guide, very well known in Jordan, he knows that tourism guides are responsible really to make sure that their groups will not harm the site. And Petra is a very important site. It's not just any, place that you can. It is a non-renewable resource, and at the same time, it belongs to the whole of humanity, not just Jordan, not you and me, and so on. This is something that is a human heritage that everybody wants to protect, and that's why it's on the UNESCO World Heritage list. Okay, thank you for your talk. And now we can move to room 1 and room 2, please. I want, please, Tamer, who is responsible for the VR Living Labs, you need to record and report to us all the ideas that come up in room number 1. So you must be in room number 1, please. Thank you. Let us now divide.
Now you can choose. Yeah, it's the windows is open.
So everyone can go and select if you want to go to room number 1 and discuss games and applications that you can develop for Petra, modern Petra. Room number 2, where we can discuss more about intangible cultural heritage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
How do we move though? I don't see anything.
دكتور طلال وين بأي روم حضرتك؟
أنا room 1.
Room 1. I will add you.
Thank you.
أي حد مش عارف يدخل على الغرفة يحكي لي رقم الغرفة 1 أو 2 وأنا بدخله.
I'm sorry. I wanted to answer you a little for the question that you made, which was how easy is it to recreate stories from ancient times in Petra? And I said that depends on the creation of characters that represent ancient people. And it is possible because we know something about the dresses from certain images in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, that are related to Nabatean people. So there is certain knowledge about how people were dressed in Petra. We know what kind of foods they ate, what kind of stuff they traded. So there are, it is possible, if not 100% accurate, but it is possible. Okay. So now we go back to maybe Narmeen can chair, and you can ask room one. Okay, you wanna say something, Mr. Pratana?
Yes. Thank you for the answer. So the life of the ancient people will be a 3D animation. I mean, in what form would you show it to the visitors at the site? Is it a 3D animation or something like that? Thank you.
Yeah, I believe that's what they meant. I think they would remodel the characters, like the ancient characters, in 3D form, and they would animate them so they can be also presented in certain, let's say, stories and scenarios that would play out in, let's say, augmented reality on site, for example. So that, I think, is what is meant by recreating those ancient characters and remodeling them and creating. So yeah, 3D animations. I hope I answered you correctly.
Thank you.
Okay. There was Rand who wanted to say something before we start the discussion. Please, Rand.
I think I stated my point, which is about Petra being center of trade and using this as an experience for people through AR and VR.
Okay. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
طيب يلا Narmeen, go ahead. Let's start with room 2 with you and then room 1. Now, I think Hanan and Diala will report.
It's fine, I can talk because we discussed everything together.
But Hanan and Diala need to record the results of this so that they can use them in their ideas later.
Okay.
With Dr. Hani.
Yes, Dr. Talal, we are there.
Yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, I think like we all agreed to this and they got a clear idea on what we talked about. It was a very collective effort, so let's go with it. At first, the group started discussing certain elements such as food, crafts, water management, and crafts, meaning pottery specifically. And eventually, throughout developing those ideas that were discussed, they came up with a certain application utilizing what was learned today throughout the lecture by Dr. Samuli regarding location-based games. So first of all, they suggested an application that starts with collecting certain pottery pieces or artifacts that are located in places around Petra. But then that progress towards, after collecting them, so what happens? You either learn about them, you put them in your inventory, they should have certain value to you. And where are these actually placed? So are they placed randomly around the site? Is there a story that takes you throughout the site, a certain trail that is designed for you to collect those pieces and so forth? So there should be certain points of interest. Then that idea progressed to creating a typical Nabatean home. So you would go around Petra and collect certain elements, let's say food elements, certain pottery elements, certain tools, and you would place them in that. You would build your own Nabatean virtual home inside Petra. So that also progressed. Then you would create certain artifacts, you'd learn how they were made, and the app allows you to recreate them or collect materials and remake those artifacts. Finally, there was also an idea about placing certain stations around Petra where you can learn about the food and recreate certain dishes, and you can share those with other players, which takes us to the last aspect that was finally added to this one huge application, is that introducing a multiplayer aspect. What that does is that after you get rewarded with some sort of information or a certain item or an artifact or a food plate, you would share it with another player, and maybe in a sort of a quest-like thingy. So you're walking around, you meet a character, and he asks you to share some sort of element that you found with another player in order to progress in the game. So it adds this certain type of interactivity. This also, the multiplayer aspect doesn't have to be a 3D animated character. It can be a real person on site. This offers a job to also people who are also there, the local people. Their job can be to actually give information for the people to proceed, the player to proceed in their game and further develop. So part of the quest is to talk to this person, answer a certain question or gain a certain information, give it to another player and progress and collect items and so forth. So this all in all summarizes the functionalities discussed, the ideas discussed, and a certain location-based app that is quite interactive and tackles the intangible cultural heritage aspects of food, pottery, and so forth.
That's very good. I can add, I just thought of something very interesting. You were talking about pottery and ceramics and so on. And I thought that we could have a game where the player collects the clay to prepare the stuff, and he processes it in a certain way. We know how it was done, and we teach him how, and so he goes and does it. And then we put him on a lathe to try and create a piece, and then paint it and put it in the oven and so on. And this teaches him how the process was done. Where you combine, yeah, okay. And we already have people who do it in Petra, so we can present a video on how it is being done. And so, Pratama, yes, okay, thank you. And that's that could be another interesting addition. فأرجو إنه ديالا and Hanan to add this, and then we will see where this will go. We will have to seek startups and SMEs to help in creating those applications and you know, benefiting from them. Okay. Can we go to room 1 now? And we said which was presided by Dr. Lato, but Tamer will report on this, please. Tamer, تفضل. Tamer, can you hear me? Hello. You need to open your microphone, Tamer. Unmute.
Okay, I don't know.
Bueno. Can you see him? Is he still in?
No, I think he's not. But if
he left.
Maybe if someone from
maybe there is a technical problem. Naif, did you or Dr. Lato, do you still remember what we were saying and would like to expose it?
I can at least say something.
Yes, please.
So one of the things we discussed at Petra, there's a lot of walking around and walking around also in groups. So also the group aspect, the social aspect was brought in, that we may need to design something that relates to groups. Then we discussed about being a merchant, because Petra used to be this kind of merchant town or location back in the day. We discussed the issues with the GPS signals, so how to technically circumvent some of those issues, for example, through taking pictures. Then we discussed interesting events in Petra. For example, one of our group members had witnessed a choir singing in one of those carved areas inside the rock, and there was this beautiful echo. So we discussed that these kind of events, it would be nice to bring people to witness those events when possible, but I think, did we discuss something else? So we had all these kinds of ideas of how to best support the uniqueness of Petra and the visitors' experience.
Okay, that's I think that covers it real well. But Mr. Pratama has a question on the chat. He's asking if the software and hardware needed by the mixed reality to use the Internet of Things. It wasn't discussed in the project from that point of view, but I know that we're using web-based, and we use all platforms to create and give out virtual and augmented reality and mixed reality, but not through the point of view of the Internet of Things per se. And I don't have a lot of experience with that, so I'm sorry. I'm not sure if it is possible or not. I mean, maybe others can tell us. Dr. Rato, perhaps, or others who have more experience in this. Anyone who has an idea, please?
In the case of iHERITAGE, let's say, or the work that's being done for Petra, they're not necessarily using Internet of Things or certain sensors to track stuff and controlling things over the cloud and Wi-Fi. They're not using that, but it can be used in certain applications, and it depends quite on what you're trying to achieve, basically. So if you're creating a mixed reality, let's say a controller in your house that you can, let's say, click on and it turns on a certain, that's the most basic example I can think of on the spot. So let's say you have an empty room full of virtual objects, and then you just have buttons and you click on the button and it turns on a physical light, let's say. That's like the fastest thing. So it can be used basically depending on the specifications and the application you're trying to create. But for like the project here, I don't think they're using Internet of Things.
No. Yeah, maybe
exactly.
Internet of Things can be useful in managing the site. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be a very, very interesting application, but not from our point of view. We are trying to do something completely different. It is tourism promotion of cultural heritage, tangible and intangible, creating innovative applications, games, etc., in order, first of all, to find jobs for young people, especially, and second, to create applications where small and medium industries can invest in. I'm sorry about Mr. Qais. I think the problem is with your microphone or your driver for the microphone, and not from our side. Now, the reason why Tamer is left is not obvious for me. He might have a technical problem, but I will discuss with him, and I will also ask him to send us another summary of the way he recorded the discussion in room 1. There is also Yusuf is asking, can you tell us? Yes, you're welcome, Mr. Pratama. Can you tell us, Yusuf, what you want to say? تفضل.
شكرا دكتور طلال. Actually, I was referring to the singing group They wanted to sing at the Nabatean Theater in Petra. I disagreed and took them to a special place where the acoustics were perfect and they enjoyed it. That was 2 weeks ago. They are called.
Did you have a recording?
Sorry?
Did you have a recording?
Yes, I do, actually.
Because we could use it if they don't mind and you don't mind. We might be able to use it in one of our panoramic visits, virtual reality visits, and so on.
I think
so
that should be okay.
Let's keep that in mind, please.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any more issues, questions, discussions? Okay, Mr. Hussam. By the way, where are you from? You need to unmute your microphone, please. Well, maybe not.
الو
تفضل.
مرحبا.
أهلين.
انا اسف بس كانه فصل عندي الصوت.
لا هلا everything is okay.
اوكي بس شو النقطة اللي كنتوا عم تحكوا فيها لانه كنت
لا كنت عم بسألك انت من وين؟
وصل لي صراحة. الو
ايوه. Are you from Jordan or Saudi Arabia? برضو فصلت الميكروفون تاعك انت. بتقدر تكتب؟ Can you write? Okay, يبدو it's okay. Anyone else has comments, please? All right, then I think this was very enjoyable. Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Lato, for your talk. It was very good, very useful to us. And thank you all for being with us. And thank you for contributing in a very effective way to the discussions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Samuli. It was a great talk, honestly, and the ideas that were presented were quite invaluable. Thank you very much.
Narmeen, can you stay a bit?
Okay, sure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone, for participating.
Okay, I think anyone who wants to leave can leave because we're done. تقدري تعملي معي زوم بعدين بعد شي نص ساعة؟
Okay.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, we'll see you then. Okay, thank you very much. We are leaving now.
Have a nice evening.